Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, the franchise tag window to be applied is officially open as of Tuesday. We'll talk about that. Plus, you'll hear from Raiders GM Dave Ziegler. He was on the Bussin with the Boys podcast, so you'll hear from him. And your calls and texts will close out the show. It's all coming up on a busy Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won, and won, and won, and won, and won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen each and every day. Remember, you can find the show free and available on all platforms thanks to my guy, Ari. He makes sure that we're up there each and every day, looking good, sounding good, and most importantly, again, up there on YouTube. Because if it wasn't for him, we would not be up on YouTube. Trust and believe that. You can find Ari on Twitter at Ari Produces. I definitely appreciate him and his efforts each and every day. Today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. And let's go ahead and get started, Raider Nation, and let's talk about the franchise tag because it could officially be applied. Of course, when we think about the franchise tag and we think about the Raiders, we think about Josh Jacobs, right? The window is open, and the Raiders have till 1 p.m. Pacific time on March 8th to decide whether to use it or not on Josh Jacobs. And I fully believe that they're going to use the franchise tag on Josh Jacobs, which does not mean that he's going to play on the franchise tag. Doesn't even mean that he's going to sign it, but it means that they're going to use it, apply it, and hold on to him by that way, you know, and try to, in efforts to try to work out a long-term deal. And if he does sign the franchise tag, then they'll have till July 15th to work out a long-term deal. And if they don't get a long-term deal done by then, well, at that point, then, you know, he has to play on the one-year deal, which is worth just over $10 million, which is not bad, right? It's fully guaranteed, $10 million, but no player in the NFL, not just Josh Jacobs, not just running backs, no player in the NFL wants to be used on the franchise tag or get hit with the franchise tag. It's a one-year commitment. It's nothing more than that. And the guaranteed money, even though it's nice for 1 year, is not what these guys are fully looking for. So there you go. Josh Jacobs is the guy that's the tag candidate as far as I'm concerned when it comes to the silver and black. And again, it's about $10 million. And I do believe that's what the Raiders ultimately will do. But they have till March 8th at 1 p.m. Pacific time to decide if they're going to hit him with the franchise tag or not. Some of the top cap numbers for running backs in 2023, just to kind of give you an example of some of the deals that are out there right now. Zeke Elliott, $16.7 million for a cap hit. Derrick Henry, $16.3. Alvin Kamara, $16 million. Nick Chubb, $14.8. Dalvin Cook, $14.1. Bengals Joe Mixon, $12.7. Christian McCaffrey is $12. Even Cardinals James Conner is $10.4. So all of those guys, their cap hit is a lot larger than that one-year franchise tag would be for Josh Jacobs, which is just over $10 million. Like, James Conner is not a better running back than Josh Jacobs, right? I mean, there's no doubt. And Dalvin Cook with Minnesota is actually a guy that they've talked about potentially releasing him. And again, that's just unfortunate what they do with running backs. The value for a running back is just not there. And most of the time when teams give running backs second contracts, they never end up really playing out the length of their second contract. They just don't, just because, again, the running back position is so undervalued and they break down so quickly because of the way that they're used, the grind, right? The everyday grind that they have to go through is never good. So that's always one area of concern when it comes to the running back position, and also giving running backs that long-term deal. Some other guys across the league that could be potential franchise tag candidates. I mean, the usual suspects. Lamar Jackson, the quarterback for the Ravens. Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley from the Giants are actually guys that could be potentially hit with the franchise tag. Geno Smith in Seattle. Tony Pollard and Dalton Schultz in Dallas. Orlando Brown with KC. Jesse Bates with the Bengals. And then Jerome Payne with Washington. Of course, Jerome Payne is the guy that I've been hoping that the Raiders make a move for in free agency and go and get him. He had 11.5 sacks as a defensive tackle this past year, and I think that the Raiders really need that defensive tackle pressure. But there's a report out of D.C. that the Commanders are 99.9% going to apply the tag on Payne. If they do that, I feel like the Raiders are out of the running. I don't think that they're going to try to go and make a trade for him, even though you could make a trade if it's a non-exclusive franchise tag. I do believe that teams could be interested in him, and that's a way that Kansas City picked up Frank Clark. Remember, there was a time when Frank Clark had the franchise tag on him, and they decided to make a move for him anyway. We've seen other guys get franchise tag and then traded. I just think that the Raiders would be out of the running if Jerron Payne gets franchise tag, and that's unfortunate. Again, the dude was a hell of a player in 2022, made it to the Pro Bowl. He's only missed one game in his 5-year NFL career, so that kind of lets you know what he's all about. The best ability is availability, and he's available, and that's a good thing. So they have until July 15th to work out that long-term deal if he does get tagged, and of course they have till March 8th at 1 p.m. Pacific time to decide to hit him with the franchise tag. Now, I did want to go over some of the salaries for guys that are getting hit, the different position groups, and it sucks for running backs. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. The running back, as I mentioned earlier, gets disrespected. Well, they get disrespected in a major way. The quarterback, you know that they're going to be the breadwinner. They're going to be the ones that make the most. Non-exclusive. These are all non-exclusive franchise tags. But for the quarterback, $32.4 million. So say Daniel Jones or Geno Smith gets hit with the franchise tag. That's $32.4 million guaranteed. Not too bad, especially for those two dudes who have had 2 good years of NFL play, and they both only done it once. Geno Smith has had 1 really good year, which was this past year, and Daniel Jones has had a really good year, which is this past year. And they might get hit with the franchise tag, which is $32.4 million, fully guaranteed for 1 year. Not too bad at all. Running backs, as I mentioned, not good. Just over $10 million. That's most likely what Josh Jacobs is going to get hit with. Wide receivers, $19.7 million, almost $20 million for a wide receiver. Tight ends, 11.3. I know that's a little low as well, but still 11.3. That's more than the running back position. Offensive linemen, $18.2 million. It's a nice little chunk of change, right? Defensive ends, guys that are trying to get after the quarterback, $19.7 million, almost $20 million. D tackles, what Jerron Payne is, $18.9 million. That's a lot of money. How about linebackers? $20.9 million, almost $21 million for 1 year, fully guaranteed for a linebacker on the franchise tag. Cornerbacks, $18.1 million. Safeties, $14.4. And the only position groups that come in less than a running back is a punter and a kicker at $5.3 million. So there you go. Running backs aren't very valued in the NFL. That's unfortunate, but $10 million is most likely what Josh Jacobs is going to get hit with that franchise tag. Now, there's also some guys to pay attention to that could end up being cap casualties before it's all said and done, including Zeke Elliott, who's got that $16.7 million cap hit. Jameis Winston's just under 16 at 15.6. Marcus Mariota there in Atlanta, $14.5 million. William Jackson, $12.1. I'm sure he's going to be a cap casualty. Matt Ryan, $35.2. He gone. Ryan Tannehill, $36.6. Yeah, most likely he's gone out of Tennessee as well. Kenny Galladay, $21.4. Khalil Mack, I know that's a guy that would interest a lot of Raider Nation, $27.4 million cap hit. Chandler Jones for the Raiders, $19.3 million. Now, his dead cap money is a lot of money, so I think that most likely what's going to happen with him is that they're going to try to restructure it and kick it down the road, and they have plenty of salary cap space for 2024, so I can see them just restructuring that contract, making it a lot less of a cap hit, and bringing him back and hoping he has more than 4.5 sacks on the season like he had in 2022. And then Carson Wentz up in D.C., $26.1 million cap hit. So there's just a few guys of note to kind of pay attention to. I think a lot of Raider Nation would be interested in Khalil Mack. I don't know if this new staff would be interested in Khalil Mack. I don't know if Patrick Graham views him as a guy that could fit in the system that he wants. But as far as I'm concerned, at the right price, definitely bring Khalil Mack back. I saw what he did with the Chargers, and he was good enough as far as I'm concerned, getting after the quarterback. You can never have enough really good pass rushers. So if the price is right, why not? Why not make a move for him? But that's all I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. News and notes of the day. Coming up in segment number 2, you'll hear from GM Dave Ziegler. He was on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast, about 2 hours long. Really good stuff. And I just have about 4 or 5 little sound bites that I want you to hear. But I do want you to go and listen to that Bussin' with the Boys podcast. Taylor Lewan and Will Compton, they do a really good job. And they have GM Dave Ziegler on their latest episode that dropped on Tuesday. So you'll hear a few sound bites coming up in segment number 2 after I tell you about the title sponsor, which is FanDuel. And it's past the All-Star break right now. And it's the perfect time to download FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. New customers, they get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then You can bet on everything from the money line, points scored, even how many threes were knocked down in a single game. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss a chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. I want you to hear a little bit from GM Dave Ziegler. He was on the Bussin with the Boys podcast with Taylor Lewan and Will Compton. Thought they did a really good job, about 2 hours long, so clearly I can't play the whole thing, and I wouldn't play the whole thing. It's a podcast for a reason. Wouldn't play the whole thing. Just want you to get a little bit of a sample size of some of the things that Dave Ziegler had to say. Next week at the Scouting Combine, we're supposed to talk to GM Dave Ziegler and also head coach Josh McDaniels. It has not been confirmed yet, or at least my credentials have not been confirmed yet from the NFL, so hopefully that happens, but we'll see. But it's nice to be able to hear from the GM. It's been a while since we actually got a chance to hear from him, and I look forward to talking to him if given the opportunity. But here's a few little sample bites of what he had to say on the podcast with Bussin with the Boys. And, you know, we've been talking a lot about the quarterback position. So, of course, the quarterback position was something that was a big topic on the show. And the first soundbite that I want to bring to the table is just on releasing Carr. One, if that was the right decision for the Raiders, because there's a lot of noise on the outside saying, oh, yeah, that was a bad decision. The Raiders messed up in that situation. So here's Dave Ziegler talking about the releasing the Carr and if he felt that was the right decision.
Yeah, and I'd be lying if I said you don't hear it all. You know what I mean? Or most of it. Like, you do. It's hard not to hear, you know, on any of the decisions that you make. And so, yeah, you just got to trust. You got to trust your gut, and you have to be convicted on the decisions that you make, and have a plan and a reason for doing it. And I'm not going to get into all that, but you know, there's a plan and a reason for every decision, and you know, like, ultimately you have to feel like you're making the best decision for the Raiders, whether it's, you know, in the short term or the long term, and ultimately that's what, you know, that's what we did in that situation.
Yeah. So there you go. Dave Ziegler right there talking about he hears everything. And I know he does. I know he does for a fact. He actually sent me a text message one night when I was on with Freddie Coleman on Freddie and Fitzsimmons on ESPN Radio and told me how much he enjoyed that show and that he's been listening to Freddie Coleman for years, which I think everybody's been listening to Freddie Coleman for years. He's been fantastic. He's an awesome dude. But, yeah, he just let me know that he was listening. So that's the thing. Like, he hears everything. He hears podcasts. He hears what's going on the radio. He pays attention, but he's also on top of his job, and he just has to trust in his gut feeling with the decision that they made to move on from Derek Carr. So now how much pressure is on his staff, him, Champ Kelly, also Josh McDaniels, to get it right? The next guy's got to be the right guy, right? I mean, and I say it all the time. They can't just have a plan. They've got to have the plan. And I say that in air quotes. Like, they've got to really have the plan that they know that, hey, they made the right decision moving on from a 9-year vet, a guy who stabilized the quarterback position, a guy who stopped that quarterback carousel that the Raiders had gone on for years on top of years. And again, was he elite? No. Was he great? No. But I think he was really good, and he did some really good things in the silver and black. So here's Dave Ziegler talking about if he feels like there's pressure to get the right guy in as the next quarterback of the silver and black.
That's the reality of it, because it's the quarterback.
Right.
It's the most important position on the team. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, like at the end of the day, like, I'm in charge of myself, and, you know, our group, we're in charge of filling the most important position on the team. And so, yeah, there's some, you know, there's some pressure that comes along with that. And however we fill it, it doesn't mean we're going to have an immediate answer, you know, this year. You know what I mean? And so, but at the end of the day, we have to have an answer.
Right.
You know, in some form or fashion, you know. And so, yeah, there's pressure that comes along with it. And again, that's also part of the excitement too, is that pressure, is finding that guy. And you know, that'll be the next task.
So I thought that was interesting what he had to say right there about, yeah, there's pressure to get it right, but he might not have that guy right away. They might not have that guy this year. And to me, that kind of raised an eyebrow, especially based off the show that I did on Tuesday here on the Locked On Raiders podcast, talking about they've got to have a dude, right? I mean, they just can't have anybody behind the center position. I mean, I talked about it really on Raider Nation Radio 920 a lot on Tuesday about how, you know, what the expectations would be if Jarrett Stidham was the starting quarterback in 2023. You know, and a lot of folks hit me up and said, 7 to 9 wins, I believe. Or, you know, if it's only 4 or 5 wins, as long as the team is building for the future, I'm good with that. And I don't buy that. I don't buy that for a second. And I'll tell you right now, as a Raider fan first, I wouldn't like that. I want to see the Raiders get to the playoffs, damn it, right? This 1 year on and couple years off thing sucks, right? They need to get back to winning and winning consistently. So I want to see them get the right guy in there, get the next guy in there, be the right guy, and give them an opportunity to win 10 games. 10 games will get you into the playoffs. 7 to 9 wins ain't going to get you to the playoffs. 10 at least gives you a chance, and that's not guaranteeing that you're going to make the playoffs. So that kind of made me raise an eyebrow thinking maybe they will roll into the season with Jarrett Stidham and maybe a rookie behind him and let him be the bridge quarterback or maybe battle it out in training camp. And, I think that if they did that as far as like a rookie quarterback and Jarrett Stidham battle it out in training camp, and the rookie won, I think the fan base would be excited just to see the progress of the rookie quarterback. But I think the expectations still would not be high to go and win 10 games and get to the playoffs because it's a rookie. How could it be? Now, I would be excited to see a rookie quarterback just go out there and see what he can do, especially with the weapons that the Raiders have. But I'll tell you right now, my expectations wouldn't be the postseason. And I think that it's been so long since the Raiders consistently been in the postseason that I would like to see that. And that's why I'm saying throw a guy like Aaron Rodgers. If you can go get Aaron Rodgers for the right price, go do it. He'll give you a chance at 10 wins. I'm not saying he's going to get 10 wins, but hell, he got 9 wins in Green Bay this past year with some weapons that he wasn't even familiar with at all and had to learn on the fly. So that's the main reason why I've been pounding the table for go make the move for Aaron Rodgers. Even if it's only 2 years, that's fine. It gives the Raiders front office time to find their next guy, their younger quarterback, to take over the reins for the long term. And you have a solid competitive guy in the meantime. That's why I feel that way. But when it comes to finding the next guy or going out of their way to kind of change up the plans, here's Dave Ziegler on his goals for this Raiders organization. And if he would divert away from the plan to try to ensure that the staff's jobs are in place and that they can be, kind of make sure that they solidify their roles. So here's a really good, interesting answer from what Dave Ziegler had to say.
For the Raiders to be a team that's everybody looks at and says like the Green Bay Packers and the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers, like they're always kind of around.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They may have a down year here or there, but when you look at the longevity of those teams, and there's more that I could name besides those teams, those are the ones that popped up in my head. Patriots,
right.
Being another one.
Yeah.
Like they're always kind of around, and I believe we're gonna get there. Doing it the way that the way that we want to do it, but I'm not going to do anything and divert for that because I'm like scared of something
or trying to like keep your job.
I'm going to buy 2 more years if we do this or that. Like that's not how I'm wired. I'm not going to go down like that.
So you hear him right there. He's not going to divert away from his plan, right? Not just to save his job. He's not wired that way, which I could appreciate. I just hope the plan is the plan and not just a plan. I mentioned it so many times. I talked about it ever since the Raiders sat down Derek Carr after that Christmas Eve game, that whatever plan it is, it's got to be the plan. It's got to be one of those that is really set in stone and that they know it's going to work. And, of course, I don't know what that plan is. I'm not privy to it. I'm like you. I'm sitting back, watching it all, unfold in front of my eyes and talking about it while it happens. That's all I have, right? I don't have any, like I said, any kind of inside knowledge on what the plan exactly looks like. So we'll see. And of course, everything really gets ramped up next week at the combine. Then you have free agency and then the draft. And then we'll really start to see what the plan looks like. The final soundbite that I have from Dave Ziegler on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast. Again, I encourage you to go check it out. It's about 2 hours long. This one's a lengthy answer. And this is about the Raiders losing all those one-score games in 2022. You remember they won a lot of them in 2021, but they lost a ton of them in 2022. Here's Dave Ziegler on what the Raiders need to do to make sure that they can win those one-score games moving forward.
Yeah, I think we lost what it was, 8 one-score games. And again, like at the end of the day, we weren't good enough. That's the fact of the matter, to win those games. And so I think when you look at them, a lot of games in football and a lot of our games this year, there's 3 or 4 plays in each game that were that didn't go our way. And so start to dig in why. Like, you have to start asking the question why. Why didn't they go that way? And again, some of them, there's a lot of different reasons. I would say the one thing that I think is important to have to being able to, I'll say it like this. I think the thing that's important to win those close games is you have to have people that you have to have a group of 11 guys that in those critical moments can all execute their assignment and be synchronized with each other. And I think at times we weren't able to do that for whatever the reason is. Do you know what I mean? And there's could be a lot of reasons to that. And I think that, and I've talked about this in other interviews, I think one thing that's important to me in terms of building the team and improving the team is improving also, I think, the football intelligence on our team.
Yeah, situational awareness.
Situational football, situational awareness, and some of that comes from who you're bringing in. Some of that comes from how how you teach it, and all those things kind of come together. But building a smart, tough, physical football team that can perform in the critical situations is kind of the philosophy, and is something that's really important to us as a Raider organization. And so I think to do that, we have to continue to find the pieces in the different rooms, whether it's the linebacker room, whether it's the defensive back room, the receiver room, whatever. Find players that embody that and that can do that in those critical moments. And I think those are some of the, if we can do that, I think we'll end up turning the tides on those close games, and those close games will be the games that we win.
So I found that to be really a great thought out answer right there. And what really stood out to me was talking about the intelligence of the players, situational football. How many times did we see during the 2022 season when the situation was on the line and it was a critical play needed to be made? There was something that the Raiders did to shoot themselves in the foot, right? Jerry Tillery, having that not personal foul, but that unsportsmanlike conduct penalty against the Rams on that last drive when they're trying to stop them from going 98 yards. The game's essentially over, but they blow that, right? And of course, plenty of opportunities, even that week 2 game against the Cardinals. All you got to do is sack Kyler Murray once or twice, and they don't get it done, right? And they gave the guy too many opportunities and blew too many opportunities. Situational football, you've got to be smart. You've got to have that football IQ, and that's something that this staff has talked about since the minute that they got hired. They're looking for guys with high football IQ, and I'm not trying to say that the current players on the Raiders team aren't smart guys and don't know football, but clearly from Dave Ziegler's point of view, he's looking for guys with even sharper IQ when it comes to football. They want to make sure that situational football, everyone's fully aware of the situation. Just perfect example is going back to the Super Bowl when, the Chiefs running back, I believe it was McKinnon, when he decides to slide before the end zone so they can go ahead and waste all the time, really salt out the clock and kick the game-winning field goal instead of getting into the end zone and scoring a touchdown and leaving time on the clock. And I know that that's not exclusive to the Chiefs, but it was something that McKinnon came out and said, hey, that's something that we practice all the time. So it wasn't even a big deal to me. It was just something like no brainer, go down and slide, right? It just came naturally. That's what it is. It's got to be instinctive. The football IQ has got to be instinctive, not something that these guys have to continue to pound and pound and pound and hope that these guys remember when the situation gets real, because when the bullets are live, you always revert back to who you are. So either you got it or you don't. You can do it in practice and understand it when everything is half speed and you know that there's nothing critical. If you make a mistake, maybe you do a lap or some push-ups, but you're not going to win or lose a game. But when it's live and it's the fourth quarter and there's 30 seconds left and you got to make that right play, you can't mess it up and you can't think about it. It's just got to be instinct. So that's what he's talking about right there. So I'm interested to see what Dave Ziegler players look like, especially in this upcoming draft. They got plenty of draft capital. We'll see how they use it, but I'm very interested to see what it looks like. Again, check out Bussin' with the Boys, their latest podcast with GM Dave Ziegler on it. It's about 2 hours long. Taylor Lewan and Will Compton do a really good job, so definitely encourage you to go check it out. Again, I only had 4 little sound bites from the show. You want to hear the whole thing. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and text straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. That's next here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Here we go, Raider Nation, segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with a call from T3 Raider Facts. He's calling to talk about Raider Nation and the fact that there's so much infighting right now. And, well, a lot of fans talking about they're ready to bounce because of things that have gone on with Derek Carr, Josh McDaniels being the head coach, Rich Bisaccia not being the head coach. Whatever the case may be, there's a lot of infighting going on, and T3 wants to talk about it. Here he is.
Hey, Q. Hey, Raider Nation. It's T3 Raider Facts. Now, there's been a lot of Raider toxicity out there, and especially on social media, and a lot of people jumping ship from the fan base because of the whole Derek Carr situation and the lack of success for the team and the step backward in 2022. Well, I would encourage the listeners of your podcast to dial it back and listen to the episodes that span from October 8th to October 29th back in 2018. We were all down, we were all questioning, but we were all passionate. Now, if you want to know how strong a family is, look to its moment of greatest adversity and see how it bounces back. Well, I will go on record as saying I wasn't a fan of the Gruden hire back in 2018, but I continued to root hard for the team. I wasn't a fan of the hiring of McDaniels in 2022, but I am a Raiders fan. This is not my team, but then again, this is my team. So I may have ideas, and I do, about what the Raiders should do, but I won't lay down my shield. I may be down. I may be upset. I may be reeling like everyone else from the lack of continued success for the team I love most, but I will go down with this ship. Having said that, the ship ain't going down, and we will be back. For those who've heard this before, you know what's coming. And for those of you who are new, or even fairly new, let me leave you with this. Passion always outlives fashion.
Thanks so much for the call, my man. I appreciate you. And I wanted to start off with your call because I'm 100% with you, right? I don't agree with everything that the Raiders do or every decision that they make. I don't. But at the same time, I've been rocking with the silver and black forever, right? Since I was a little Q. Now I'm a big Q, right? I've been rocking with them forever. I've been there for, the bad days, the good days, and the bad days again. And hopefully in the future, there's going to be some good days as well, right? Some more good days. But it's always been about the shield. It's always been about the silver and black. It's always been about the Raiders. It's never been, for me, about one individual. And even when Khalil Mack got traded, and I was pissed. Like, make no mistake about it, I was pissed when he got traded. Went and did an emergency podcast because I was so angry that he got traded. But I got over that too. It was never just like exclusive to, Khalil Mack's not a Raider anymore. I'm done with the team. Like, it just has never, ever, I've never been cut like that. Even when Charles Woodson left and went to the Green Bay Packers as a free agent, I didn't say I'm done with the Raiders because they didn't re-sign my favorite player. And Charles Woodson, no doubt about it, was my favorite player, right? But it's just so crazy how, a guy like Derek Carr or a head coach like Josh McDaniels or Rich Bisaccia not getting the head coach job has like really galvanized the fan base and has made so much infighting. And again, I know a lot of it's on social media, but I hear a lot of the calls. I hear a lot of everything where people are just angry and upset. And it's like everyone's mad at something. And, I've done shows where I talk about it's just a game. And at the end of the day, it's not, this is not heart surgery, right? We're not saving lives. The Raiders aren't saving lives. They're entertaining for 3 or 4 hours a Sunday or a Monday or a Thursday or a Saturday or, hopefully in a playoff game. But at the end of the day, man, it's literally just a game. And the reason why I've always been a Raider fan is because I always felt like when I pulled up at the Coliseum, no matter what you look like, no matter what your religious beliefs were, no matter what your politics were, no matter anything, it was like we were all silver and black and we're high-fiving and hugging all game long. And even when the Raiders lose, it was like, yeah, that sucks, but it sucked together, right? I mean, that's what it was. And now, and I know some of it has to do with the move as well, right? There's some fans that are angry because the Raiders are in Vegas and, well, it'll never be the Coliseum. And it won't. It won't. Like, I'll be the first to tell you it won't. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to stop being a Raider fan. Follow these guys from Oakland to L.A., back to Oakland, now Vegas. I mean, it's the Raiders are the Raiders. And it's always been bigger than just one individual. And anytime I've ever introduced anyone to the Raiders, I always said, man, just go to a game and you'll immediately fall in love with the team because of the way the fan base is all one big family. And I'll tell you right now, I ain't gonna lie, the last couple of years, it ain't really felt like a big family. It felt like a lot of family and then a lot of the cousins that you don't really like to come to your house. Right? Like, you're, oh man, I can't wait till that guy leaves. Right? That's what a lot of it's felt like, and it sucks. But, I mean, at the end of the day, for me, it's always be about the shield. It'll never be about an individual. But thank you, T3, for that call. I thought that was really good stuff. Next up is a text from Slayer Raider in Chicago. He says, Q, I think if we had Aaron Rodgers last year, we would have went 15-2 or 14-3. If you look at all those close games we lost, I believe those would have been wins. That's Slayer Raider in Chicago. And I can't guarantee that they would have been wins, but I do think, 2 or 3 games for sure probably would have been different if Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback. And that's not a slight to Derek Carr. It's just the fact that I think that Aaron Rodgers would be more aggressive in the red zone, especially with his buddy Devontae. That's the one thing, even though Devontae had a hell of a season, he really did. I still think that there was meat left on the bone, and really in the red zone, I didn't think there was enough targets to Devontae Adams because that's one of the places that he dominated and has dominated throughout his career is in the red zone. He's just so hard to cover. I didn't feel like Devontae had enough targets down in the red zone. He got a lot of more of his touchdowns from about 15, 20 yards out, which I know anything inside the 20 is the red zone, but it really felt like he got a lot of his touchdown catches from from long range, like not always bombs, but still, he had the walk-off touchdown in Denver. He had touchdown catches against the San Francisco 49ers. That was 66 yards with Jarrett Stidham. I mean, there's so many plays that happened that were not necessarily the red zone. I feel like he could have done a lot more. So I do think that there's a couple games that could have gone in the Raiders' direction if Rodgers was the quarterback. But the one thing I give Derek Carr credit for, he was always good at comebacks. He really was, and he's done that throughout the course of his career. It's a shame that he had to come back as much as he did, but he was always good at comebacks, so I don't want to take too much from him. But thank you so much for that text. I do appreciate you. Next up, got a call from yours truly in Ohio. He's calling to give his thoughts on who he thinks the Raiders will go get and should go get for the next signal caller for the Silver and Black. There he is, yours truly in Ohio.
Hey, Q, it's yours truly in Ohio. And I got a little something on the whole quarterback thing for the Raiders. I believe we should go and get Jimmy G. Save the draft picks. Save a whole lot of salary cap and everything else. I'll probably get murdered for saying that. And then go ahead and draft the quarterback later on in the rounds. And like you've been preaching, build the defense up and maybe get some weapons and the offensive line. But just to beat the Rodgers horse a couple more times and for aesthetic reasons. But think about Aaron Rodgers and the black number 12. I mean, tell me that doesn't give you Ken Stabler vibes. I mean, think about it for a second. Anyway, I hope we do something in this offseason. I hope we can turn things around. I believe in the McDaniels and Ziegler, thing that they've got going on there. And I don't know, man. We don't know what the future holds, so we can sit here and contemplate everything, and they should do this, they should do that, but it's ultimately in their hands. And as us as a nation, one Raider nation, we got to support them 100%. So love what you do, keep it up, and go Raiders.
Thank you so much for the call, my man. And yeah, Jimmy G is definitely an option. I hope he's not the top option. That's just me. I hope he's nothing more than a fallback plan. I don't trust his availability. Again, that's me. I really think that if they can make Rodgers and the salary and the draft capital work, that should be the way that they go. That, again, just my gut feeling, just my preference. But you got to go get the best guy available, right? I just don't know if rolling with Jarrett Stidham and a rookie, or Jarrett Stidham or a rookie, or even Jimmy G, really, for that matter, is going to really light the fan base up and get them excited. But again, it's not going to be about the fan base. If you do what the fan base wants you to do, you end up sitting with the fans. So there's that, right? So thank you for that call. I do appreciate you. And got time for one more text from Stabler's Ghost. He says, "Sup, Q, it's Stabler's Ghost from the Northeast. Just giving my thoughts on our quarterback situation. I don't want to give up multiple first-round picks for Rodgers to sit in the dark every offseason to see if he wants to play anymore. And he is no spring chicken. We need a good vet that's not Rodgers and to draft our guy at 7. You mentioned Mayfield, and though I'm not necessarily a fan, if that lets us get a young stud at 7, let's go. I'd prefer Stroud to Young, but that's just me. Love to hear your thoughts, Q. Go Raiders." That's from Stabler's Ghost. And that's the thing, man. I'm not real high on the Baker Mayfield train either. I'm not. I know it's a possibility. Maybe that's a direction that they go, and maybe they go find their young stud at number 7. I prefer Bryce Young over C.J. Stroud, but I prefer C.J. Stroud's size over Bryce Young, if that makes sense, right? I think those two guys are guys that can start immediately, and that would be my preference is one of those two guys who I feel like are NFL ready now. Do they have to grow some more? Obviously, but I think that they can grow and still be playing. So I'd prefer one of those two guys, Stroud's size over Bryce Young, but I like Bryce Young, the quarterback, better. So we'll see. Again, Rodgers, I just think gives you an opportunity to feel like you could win 10 games just with the offense alone. I mean, remember, this offense was ranked 12th when the season was all said and done, and that's not bad. And I think it'd be ranked top 10 if Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback and working with Devontae Adams and Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow and bring Josh Jacobs back. I feel like you're really cooking with grease in that opportunity if he's your quarterback. But again, that's just me. So we'll see. Again, if the draft capital is not a gross amount, like way too much, I'm okay with it. The salary, I'm really not that worried about. The salary cap goes up each and every year. The Raiders have over $119 million in salary cap space next year. So I think that they can make that work, no doubt. I think it's the draft capital that would really bother me if they had to give up too much. I'm not looking at multiple first-round picks either. I really would not want to see that. But thank you so much for that text. I do appreciate you. And that's all the time I got for on today's show. Raider 541, His call will be on tomorrow. Also, we got Raider Al in Georgia. Got a great call from him. Bring that up tomorrow. Plus, we'll have more calls and texts throughout that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line. We'll have more news and notes, and of course, plenty of conversation as we keep this week rolling. And we're flying by, especially with the short week. Even though it's not a short week here on the podcast, it just feels like a short week in general since we had the holiday on Monday. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.